The rain had been falling since before sunrise, the kind of steady, quiet rain that made the streets glisten and the sky look heavy. Sarah Mitchell drove through the sleepy roads of her small Washington town, her wipers swiping back and forth in a slow, tired rhythm. She had been up late the night before working on a last-minute order at the bakery where she worked, and her eyes still felt heavy. She told herself she just had to get through this morning's shift, and then she'd finally get a little rest. Her faded blue sedan that had been her loyal companion for nearly 7 years wasn't feeling well either. It had been making strange noises for weeks, a low groan every time she changed gears. But Sarah had been pushing it off. She didn't have the extra money for a repair right now. Rent was due next week and groceries had already stretched her budget thin. She told herself the car would last just a little longer. But halfway to work, on a quiet stretch of road lined with dripping pine trees, the engine made a sharp clunking sound. Sarah's heart sank. The groan turned into a cough, and then, without warning, the whole car shuddered violently. The steering felt heavy in her hands, and the speedometer needle dropped. "No, no, no," she whispered, as if her words could convince the car to keep going. But the sedan let out one last loud hiss before the engine went completely silent. Sarah guided it to the side of the road, the tires splashing through shallow puddles, and stopped under the shelter of a crooked street lamp. Steam rose from the hood, curling upward in the cold, damp air. She rested her forehead against the steering wheel for a moment, closing her eyes. This wasn't just bad timing. This was terrible timing. She was already late for work, she didn't have money for a tow, and she definitely didn't have money for a big repair bill. She tried turning the key again. The engine made a sad clicking noise, but nothing else. Sarah leaned back in her seat, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. Rain tapped on the windshield, and the sound seemed louder now, like the world was reminding her she was alone out here. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. It was her boss, wondering why she wasn't at the bakery yet. Sarah's voice wavered as she explained the situation, promising to make it in as soon as she could. The call ended, leaving her in the stillness of the rainy morning. With a sigh, she searched for a local towing service on her phone. The first few numbers didn't pick up. Finally, she reached a man named Gary, who agreed to come within the hour. Sarah sat in the car, hugging her coat tighter around her, watching droplets slide down the glass. She thought about the repairs. What if it was something small? Maybe it wouldn't cost much. But a heavy feeling in her chest told her that luck wasn't on her side today. The tow truck arrived, its orange lights cutting through the mist. Gary was kind but quiet, asking her to pop the hood before he hooked up the car. "Where do you want me to take it?" he asked. She thought for a moment, remembering the small auto shop near the edge of town. She'd seen it every day on her commute. Miller's Auto, the sign said, with a painted picture of an old classic car underneath. She'd never been inside, but it seemed like the kind of place where people knew your name. "There?" she said softly. The ride to the shop was bumpy and smelled faintly of diesel. Sarah stared out the window, watching the rain blur the outlines of houses and storefronts. Her thoughts kept circling back to her bank account, the bills on her kitchen table, and the way her chest tightened every time she thought about the word transmission. She knew enough about cars to know that word could mean disaster for her wallet. When they arrived, the garage doors were open, letting out the warm metallic smell of oil and machinery. Inside, a man was leaning over the engine of a red pickup truck. He straightened when he saw the tow truck. Wiping his hands on a rag, Gary gestured toward him. "That's Daniel Miller. He's the owner." Daniel walked over, tall and broad-shouldered, with warm brown eyes that seemed to take in every detail without rushing. His dark hair was slightly messy, and his sleeves were rolled up to reveal strong forearms dusted with grace. He had the kind of presence that made you feel like you could trust him, even if you just met him. "This her car?" asked Gary. "Yeah, stalled out on Maple Street." Daniel turned to Sarah, offering a small smile. "Let's get it inside and take a look." His voice was steady, with a low, calm tone that somehow made the situation feel less hopeless. Inside the shop, the fluorescent lights cast a soft glow over stacks of tires, toolboxes, and the gleam of chrome. Sarah followed Daniel as he guided the car into a bay. He opened the hood, leaning in to inspect the engine. The sound of rain on the shop roof mixed with the occasional clink of his tools. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. Sarah sat on a worn leather chair in the corner, nervously twisting her scarf in her hands. Every time Daniel glanced up from the engine, she tried to read his expression, but his face stayed neutral. Finally, he set down his wrench and wiped his hands again. "Sarah," he began, his tone softer now. "It's your transmission. It's gone, and replacing it, well, it would cost more than the car's worth." The words felt heavy in the air. Sarah swallowed hard, her throat tight. "How much?" she asked, though she already feared the answer. He told her the number. It was more than she had in her bank account, more than she could even imagine pulling together anytime soon. Her stomach turned. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, and she believed he meant it. Sarah forced a small nod, trying not to let her voice shake. "Then I guess I'll just have to figure something out." As she stood to leave, she caught Daniel watching her, not with pity exactly, but with a quiet kind of thoughtfulness. It was as if he was turning something over in his mind, weighing a decision he hadn't yet made. She didn't know it then, but that look was the first sign that everything was about to change. The next morning, the rain had finally stopped, but the air still carried the scent of wet pavement and pine. Sarah didn't want to go back to Miller's auto. She had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying Daniel's words over and over. The transmission's gone, more than the car's worth. The number he had quoted felt like a wall she couldn't climb. Still, she needed her keys, and she didn't want to leave her car sitting in the shop's bay forever. She walked a few blocks from her apartment, the damp air clinging to her hair. Her shoes made soft splashes in leftover puddles. Her stomach twisted with each step. She wasn't sure why she felt nervous. It wasn't like Daniel was going to ask her for the money right away. But there was something about the way he had looked at her yesterday, that quiet thoughtfulness, that made her wonder if he was the kind of man who noticed more than he said. When she reached the shop, the big garage doors were open again. The smell of warm metal and motor oil drifted out into the street. She spotted Daniel right away. He was standing beside a black SUV, wiping his hands on a rag. The sunlight caught in his hair, making it look lighter in some places, and for a moment, Sarah forgot what she was going to say. He looked up when he saw her. "Morning, Sarah." His voice had that same steady tone, like the kind of sound you wanted to hear when everything else in your life felt uncertain. "Morning," she replied, her voice small. "I came to pick up my keys." Daniel nodded, then glanced toward the corner of the shop where her sedan sat, looking a little more tired than it had yesterday. "Sure," he said, but he didn't move to get them. Instead, he leaned against the workbench, watching her for a moment. "I've been thinking about your situation," he said finally, and there was something about the way he said thinking that made her heart give a small, uncertain flutter. Sarah shifted her weight, unsure what to expect. "Okay?" He set the rag down and stepped closer, lowering his voice like he didn't want the other mechanic in the shop to overhear. "I might have an idea. It's not exactly standard, but it could solve your problem." Her eyebrows pulled together. What kind of idea? Daniel's eyes held hers for a moment, as though he was making sure she wouldn't just turn and walk out. "I have a car I've been restoring," he said slowly, "a 1968 Mustang. Special to me. My dad and I started working on it years ago, before he passed. I've been finishing it on my own." Sarah nodded, though she didn't see where this was going. "That sounds really nice, but I don't know much about cars." "That's the thing," Daniel said, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "I could use some help with it, cleaning parts, sanding panels, holding things in place while I work. Nothing dangerous, just an extra set of hands." She blinked. "You want me to help you fix your Mustang?" "In exchange," he said, "I'll cover the cost of repairing your sedan. Completely. You won't owe me anything." The words hung in the air between them, savvy with possibility. Sarah felt like she should laugh. People didn't just offer to pay for expensive repairs out of kindness. Not in real life. Certainly not for someone they had just met. "Why would you do that for me?" she asked, her voice softer now. Daniel didn't answer right away. His eyes searched hers, and for the first time, she saw something in them that wasn't just kindness. It was warmer, deeper, almost like he was holding back a truth he wasn't ready to share. Because, he said finally, sometimes you meet someone and you just know you want to help them, no matter what it takes. Her pulse quickened. There was something in the way he said someone, the way his voice dipped slightly, that made her think he wasn't just talking about her car anymore. She crossed her arms, more to steady herself than anything else. "This is unusual, I know," he said with a small shrug. "But you don't strike me as someone who's afraid of unusual." Sarah didn't know whether to feel flattered or suspicious. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately. This was her way out. Her chance to get her car running without drowning in debt. But another part of her couldn't stop wondering about the cost that wasn't written down anywhere. "I'd have to think about it," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Daniel's smile returned, just faintly. "Of course, think about it. But I'll be working on the Mustang tonight. If you want to stop by, I'll show you what I mean." She nodded slowly, feeling the conversation settle into her chest like a stone. "Okay." As she walked out of the shop, keys in hand, Sarah felt the cool air brush against her face. The sound of cars passing on the wet road faded behind her, but her thoughts were loud enough to fill the silence. This wasn't just about a broken car anymore. She could feel it. She pictured Daniel's steady eyes, the way he had leaned in slightly when he spoke, as though he was letting her into some kind of secret. She thought about the Mustang, old, beautiful, waiting for its final touches. She thought about evenings in that warm, oil-scented garage, the hum of tools, the closeness that came from working side by side. And she thought about the fact that, for reasons she didn't fully understand yet, the idea didn't scare her as much as it should have. That night, long after she had decided she was just going to think about it, Sarah found herself walking back toward the glow of the shop's windows. Sarah didn't know exactly what she was getting herself into when she agreed to help Daniel with the Mustang. She told herself it was just a way to get her car fixed without falling deeper into debt. But the truth was, as the days passed, she found herself looking forward to the evenings in the small garage more than she expected. The workshop smelled like oil and old wood, and the sound of tools and motors became strangely comforting. It was a quiet place, away from the rush and worries of her daily life. Daniel was there every night after his day job, working patiently on the Mustang. He never rushed and never got frustrated, even when things didn't go as planned. Sarah was clumsy at first. She wasn't used to handling metal parts or sanding down rough edges. Her hands would tremble, or she'd accidentally drop a tool. But Daniel was patient, gently guiding her fingers, showing her how to hold a piece steady or where to apply pressure. There was something in the way he taught her, quiet, kind, and focused, that made her feel safe even when she felt unsure of herself. They worked side by side, sometimes in comfortable silence, sometimes talking softly about their lives. Daniel told her about his father, who had loved cars and had taught him everything he knew before passing away too soon. Sarah shared her own dreams, how she wanted to save money, move to Portland someday, and open a small cafe where people could come and feel at home. Their conversations were easy, but there was always a current beneath the words, something unspoken that hung in the air, like the scent of gasoline in rain. Sarah noticed how Daniel's eyes would linger a moment longer than necessary, how his hand would brush hers when passing a tool. She felt her heart flutter at those small touches, the way her skin would warm when their hands accidentally met. One evening, after a long day of sanding and polishing, they sat on a bench beside the Mustang, which was slowly coming back to life, shining under the garage lights like a treasure waiting to be claimed. Daniel looked at her, his expression softer than usual. "You're a natural, you know," he said quietly. "I didn't think you'd be this good with your hands." Sarah laughed, a little breathless. "I'm just lucky you're patient." He smiled, but there was something deeper in his eyes, something she couldn't quite name yet. They talked less after that, the air between them charged with something they were both careful not to say out loud. Sarah found herself stealing glances at him, wondering what he was thinking. Was he feeling the same way? Or was it just her imagination? One night, as they stood side by side cleaning the Mustang's shiny chrome bumper, Daniel suddenly stopped and looked at her seriously. "Sarah, there's something I've been meaning to tell you," he said, his voice low and a little rough, like he was trying to find the right words. She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. "What is it?" He hesitated, then took a slow breath. "I'm not sure how you'll react, but I need to be honest." Sarah nodded, unable to say anything. The silence stretched between them, thick with meaning. Daniel reached out and brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The simple touch made her knees weak. "I don't want this to be just about the Mustang," he said softly. "Or about fixing your car," her breath caught. I want to get to know you, really know you." Sarah's eyes widened. For a moment, she felt like the world had stopped spinning. "I don't know if you feel the same," he continued, "but since the first day you walked into my shop, I've been thinking about you more than I should." Her cheeks warmed, and she looked down at her hands. Part of her wanted to deny it, to say it was just the stress or the long nights working together, but deep inside, she knew the truth. "I feel it too," she whispered. They stood there, close but not touching, their breaths mingling in the cool garage air. The sound of the city outside faded away, and for a moment, it was just the two of them and the old Mustang, a symbol of something unfinished but beautiful. Before either of them could say more, the sudden ring of the shop phone broke the moment. Daniel sighed and reached for it, his face shifting from soft to serious. The call was brief, but when he hung up, something in his eyes had changed. "That was an offer," he said quietly. "Someone wants to buy the Mustang for more than I ever imagined." Sarah felt a sharp twist in her chest. She looked at the car they had worked on together, at the memories folded into every polished surface. "So what will you do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked back at her, steady and sure. "I'm not selling it, not now. Not ever." Her heart beat faster. He took a step closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Because this car, it's more than just metal and paint. It's a piece of my past, and now it's something we built together." Sarah smiled, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. "Then what happens now?" she asked, her voice trembling with hope. Daniel reached out and took her hand in his, holding it like it was the most precious thing in the world. "Now," he said, "we see where this road takes us." And as the Mustang sat quietly in the corner of the shop, shining and waiting, Sarah felt something new stirring inside her, a quiet promise that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be fixed. Not just cars, but hearts too. The weeks that followed were some of the most unexpected and beautiful of Sarah's life. The garage, once just a place of work and worry, became a refuge. Daniel and Sarah spent more and more evenings there, working side by side on the Mustang, their connection growing deeper with each passing day. Sarah found herself smiling more, laughing freely in a way she hadn't in a long time. Daniel's easy presence was a balm to her tired heart. He wasn't just the mechanic who fixed her car. He was becoming someone she wanted to know in every way. One cool autumn evening, the sky was painted with soft pink and orange as the sun began to set. The garage was quiet, except for the gentle hum of a radio playing old love songs in the background. They had just finished polishing the Mustang's freshly painted hood, and Sarah was wiping a smudge off the side mirror when Daniel suddenly spoke. "You know, I've been thinking about that night I offered to fix your car in exchange for help on the Mustang," he said softly, his eyes on her face. Sarah turned to look at him, curious. "Yeah." Daniel smiled, a little shy this time. "At first, I wasn't sure if you'd say yes. I worried you might think I was being strange." Sarah laughed gently. "I did think it was strange, but now I'm glad I said yes." He stepped closer, the soft light making his eyes shine. "Me, too." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the world outside fading away. Sarah felt her heart beat faster. The nervousness she'd felt the first time she stepped into the garage was gone, replaced by something warm and certain. Daniel reached out and took her hand, his fingers gently curling around hers. "Sarah, I know life hasn't been easy for you, and I don't want to rush anything, but I want you to know something important." She looked up at him, her breath catching. "I want to be here for you, not just to fix cars or share quiet nights, but to share your life." Tears sprang to Sarah's eyes, not because she was sad, but because for the first time in a long time she felt seen, truly seen and loved. "I want that too," she whispered. They stood there for a moment longer, their hands still entwined, the air full of promise and quiet joy. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle like distant stars, and the Mustang gleamed under the garage lights, a symbol of what they had built together. As the days turned into weeks, their bond only grew stronger. Daniel helped Sarah prepare for her big dream, opening that small cafe she had always talked about. He surprised her by fixing up an old sign for her future shop, painting it by hand with care and patience. Sarah, in turn, helped Daniel sort through his father's old tools and memories, making space for new ones. They shared more than just work, now long talks over coffee, quiet dinners at her apartment, and weekend walks under the golden leaves of fall. Each moment felt like a small thread weaving their lives closer together. One chilly evening, Sarah found herself sitting on the garage steps, wrapped in a soft blanket. While Daniel worked on the Mustang's engine, she watched him, the way his brow furrowed in concentration, the way his hands moved with skill and love. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked softly. Daniel looked up and smiled, wiping his hands on a rag. "Every day. But now the future looks a little less scary." Sarah's heart swelled. "Because of me." He nodded, his eyes gentle and warm. "Because of us." Their journey hadn't been perfect. There were moments of doubt and worry, times when life's struggles pushed at them like a heavy wind. But they faced those moments together, learning to lean on each other. One night, as snow began to fall softly outside the shop, Daniel surprised Sarah with a small gift, a simple necklace with a tiny charm shaped like a gear, symbolizing the world that had brought them together. "It's not much," he said, "but it's a reminder that even broken things can be beautiful when cared for." Sarah wore the necklace close to her heart, feeling the weight of its meaning. It wasn't just about cars or repairs anymore. It was about healing, trust, and love. The Mustang was finally finished, restored to its shining glory, and it stood proudly in the garage, a testament to their hard work and growing connection. On the night of its first real test drive, Daniel asked Sarah to come with him. They drove through the quiet streets, the wind cool on their faces, the engine purring like a contented cat. They talked about dreams and fears, about the past and the future, about everything and nothing all at once. As the car rolled to a stop under a star-filled sky, Daniel reached for Sarah's hand again. "I don't know what comes next," he said, "but I want to face it with you." Sarah smiled, her eyes shining with tears of hope and happiness. "Me too." And in that moment, under the vast night sky, with the car that had brought them together shining beside them, two hearts that had once been broken found a new beginning. They didn't have all the answers, but they had each other.